All good.
Can you hear me? Hi, Arun, can you hear me? Arun, you can't be heard. You're on mute.
Greetings. It is a webinar presented by the International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka with the Daily FT and the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. And we also have other partners, the MBA Alumni Association of the University of Colombo, the Computer Society of Sri Lanka, the Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Association of HR Professionals, AAT Sri Lanka, CIMA Sri Lanka or CIMA Sri Lanka, and the Pioneer Institute of Business and Technology. And of course, as was evident, our webinar is sponsored by ACCA. Now, it must be mentioned that this webinar is reaching an international audience, and it can be accessed via several Facebook platforms. It is a live event and can be reached on the Facebook pages of ICCSL, the Daily FT, CIMA, WCIC, then AHRP, that's the HR Professionals, AAT Sri Lanka, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and the MBA Alumni Association of the University of Colombo. So we welcome all of our wide audience who will be viewing this now. And we might also mention that over the next few days, this live event will remain on these Facebook pages and can be accessed by anyone at another time. So it remains, and we usually find that many people do follow this even after our live program right now is concluded. Now, expectations from the budget 2024, that's our theme, and it is the 38th webinar that is being presented under the aegis of ICCSL. So the national budget proposal is one that elicits much interest, and the stakeholders are many and varied. So those with long memories will know that the economic policy of Ceylon and of Sri Lanka, at least from the year 1953 onwards, has been on an unsustainable trajectory. And compounding the issues that the economy has faced are the political shades and influences and ambitions that too often have led to what has been called populist measures, which have in turn caused negative impacts and created a debt burden that has incrementally crushed the nation. So there is the long term and there is the short term consideration. Now, with the current reality, both of these, long term, short term, are needed to be brought to bear. Not only are investors interested in this, but financiers and business people, yes, there are also stakeholders. And vast numbers are known to be near poverty. And others, even those who are employed, suffer privations and will continue to face issues with so many knock-on effects of the world economy, which is also in a spin now with various events that have taken place, hardly need elaboration, but fresh crises have erupted with these wars that have also started off here, there, and everywhere. So achieving balance can be a challenge. Now, some have opined that this crisis that is being faced now provides an opportunity for some meaningful adjustments and course correction. At this moment, I would like to invite everyone to pay close attention to what the IMF representatives who visited Sri Lanka recently did observe in a public statement that was issued at a press briefing. And we are going to play that to you. And it's a short one. And we can ascertain from the comments made what the overall perspective is with regard to the current state of the Sri Lankan economy is, or its prospects for the future. Let's listen, please.
The people of Sri Lanka have shown remarkable resilience in the face of enormous challenges. Sri Lanka has made commendable progress in implementing difficult but much needed reforms. These efforts are bearing fruit as the economy is showing tentative signs of stabilization. Inflation is down from a peak of 70% to today 1.3%, and gross international reserves increased by $1.5 billion between March and June this year, and shortages of essentials have eased. But full economic recovery is not yet assured. Growth momentum remains subdued, with real GDP contracting 3.1% in the second quarter this year on a year-on-year basis, and high-frequency economic indicators still sending mixed signals. Reserve accumulation has slowed in recent months. In this challenging environment, the authorities have undertaken important steps on monetary and fiscal policies, as well as implemented structural reforms to address the ongoing economic crisis. The government has met the program's primary balance targets and remains committed to this important pillar of the program to support their efforts to restore debt sustainability. Key legislations have passed in Parliament, including the Central Bank Act and the Anti-Corruption Act. And these could improve governance if implemented effectively.
Offer some frank observations by various well-known personalities from among the professionals and those representing professional bodies who have already been engaging with policymakers like they have not been able to do before this time. They have now. And we have bankers, business leaders, and those with an academic interest in economic policy for Sri Lanka's recovery, as well as members of parliament who will have the opportunity to comment on this theme. What is expected with the budget 2024? So we have keynote speakers. And we have the first one, Dr. Harsha de Silva, who's a member of Parliament, of course, and he's also the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance. So for the next few minutes, we invite your attention as Dr. Harsha de Silva speaks.
Yeah, thank you, Arun. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Okay, right, excellent. First of all, thanks for inviting me to this panel. I must tell you that I have to leave to a meeting out of town, so I will sort of switch from my computer to my phone at some point, and I'll be in the car. So
It does look like Harsha went offline for a reason which might be entirely technical, but we hope that he will be able to link back on again. So, all right, he's back on again. Thank you. We need to have you unmuted, Harsha, please. Unmute. All right, fine.
yeah, I'm unmuted, right? Okay. I don't know what happened. I just went off and I'm back. Are we okay again? Are we okay?
Yes, Harsha, all up.
Okay, right. All right. So as the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance, my job is to, among other things, to approve the appropriations bill and the revenue expected. President as finance minister will sort of spell it out on Monday. But we have gone through most of the details, and all what I can do is to ask questions from the Treasury officials who prepare the budget, try to sort of ensure that they fall within the given guidelines, because policy making is not my job. My job is just to try and ensure that we are within the legislative boundaries. So first of all, about the budget, what we know is we have a total expenditure of almost 8 trillion rupees, 7.8 trillion, right? That's 7,800 and almost 50 billion. Of that, what we have
Okay, Harsha, I think we need to unmute and start again.
Yeah, I mean,
carry on.
Is there some conspiracy going on to shut me out?
Not one that we are aware of.
Must check. I mean, I never happens to me this what is happening now, but nevertheless, I'm quite used to this. So of the 7,850 billion, what we have essentially is primary expenditure of about 4 billion or 3,900 billion, recurrent of 2,700 billion, and capital of 1,200 billion. Now, in this 2,700 billion recurrent expenditure, what we essentially have are salaries of 1,100, pensions of almost 400, Aswasuma of 200, various subsidies of about 250, and so on. Now, what is interesting is while salaries and pensions put together will be about 1,400, our interest expense is going to be about 2,700 billion, right? So it's massive, right? Now, this 2,700 billion interest is an increase of about 500 billion from last year. So even after we did the domestic restructure, and we are expecting the foreign currency restructure also to happen soon. In fact, yesterday, I don't know whether the press picked it up. President Wickremesinghe was at an event at the BMICH, and he did mention that they have got a letter from the Exim Bank of China, which we have been waiting for. But since it has not been reported, I don't know whether it was, how accurate that statement was. But having said that, we are expecting a certain external debt restructure, the details of which they have sort of shared with me, which perhaps we can talk on a general level later on. We have a principal payment of about 1,300 billion. So that's how this 7,835 billion rupees of expenditure is made up. Now, the question is, how much revenue are we going to make, right? In the appropriations bill, the revenue estimates obviously are not given. That will be given tomorrow or day after. But what we do know is that the borrowing estimate is given, which is what the parliament approves, and that is 3,900 billion. So if you sort of back calculate it, what you are looking at is about revenue of around 4 trillion or 4,000 billion. So where are we going to get 4,000 billion rupees worth of revenue? Now, if you compare this with this year, what we are expecting this year is about 2,400 billion. So 2,400 billion will have to go up to 4,100 or 4,000 billion, right? So this is a fairly large increase in revenue that the government must somehow get. Now, this is based on the strict guidelines that I think Peter Brewer, who spoke earlier, was saying. We need to have a primary surplus of 0.8%, going from a minus 0.7% of this year. Now, something that we have to keep in mind is when you talk about these percentages, etc., what were our assumptions in terms of growth this year? What was the nominal growth figure? Did we get to it? And the actual revenue that we are making as a percentage of GDP, where do we fall? Because while the rupee number is a lot less than what we were expecting, for instance, we were expecting almost 3.4 trillion in revenue, and we'll end up with 2.8 or 2.85 trillion in revenue. So that's a large fall. But in terms of GDP, percentage of GDP, we are only falling from 11.3% expectation to 10.1%. Now, that is because inflation was expected to be 27% this year. But the revised figure is only 16%. So therefore, the nominal GDP of 30.3 billion, we will only have 28.1 billion. So the issue there is, even though we are not going to be making the expected rupee value of revenue, it will still not be really terribly bad in terms of percentages of GDP. So these are all numbers. Now, the budget, what everybody is going to be looking at is two things. In the short term, what's going to happen to taxes? Where are we going to increase revenue? I see Tanya looking quite worried because she's been talking about the SMEs and all that. Now, where will the taxes come from? I cannot go into details on a non-disclosure, but where will it come from? So the government also, one must understand, is in a very, very tricky place. right? And the fact is, how much more taxes can this economy bear? Small businesses are already very badly hit. Now, there we already know that VAT is going up to 18%. That will have a certain impact in terms of positive impact on revenue, even though it's a hugely negative impact on consumer expenditure. With consumer expenditure falling, how can SMEs survive? And all those are questions that need to be answered at a broader scale. And also, we know VAT is going to come on a whole bunch of exemptions that we earlier had. So all the exemptions are going to go, and VAT will come on all these exemptions. The cabinet has already approved those amendments. However, what we do know is that even though the VAT is going to be applicable on thus far exempted products and services, other tariffs, para tariffs, will go away. So it does not mean there is going to be an 18% impact. There will be some impact, but once you need to take out the para tariffs, then only you need to look at the net increase. So a question that people probably will be asking is, what might perhaps happen to the VAT threshold? What might perhaps happen to the social security threshold? Would those be sort of changed or brought down in such a way that you can make additional revenue and so on? So these probably would be the issues that we'll have to wait for President Wickremesinghe to spell out on Monday. But also, for instance, on withholding tax, on other, direct taxes, the country has been speaking on in terms of, wealth tax or property tax and things like that. And also on import restrictions, once import restrictions are taken out, border taxes will hopefully could be collected. Now, another point in this is, what we had expected, for instance, in tobacco, what we expected in alcohol, what we expected in casinos, etc. We haven't been able to collect. So the issue, on the one hand, while it is true that you need to broaden the tax net and get people to pay, whether it is payee or whether it is VAT or whether it is SSCL, there are lots of loopholes that that people are, as we all know, are sort of managing to avoid paying taxes. Lots of corrupt activities going on, sugar scams one after the other, then the alcohol sticker scam, etc. And also something that I have been questioning officials is on sort of elasticity of tax. What is the Laffer curve on different items on tax, depending on the availability of substitutes, and the opportunity to not pay because the expected value of tax avoidance is quite high. People are willing to take the risk of perhaps even getting caught and not paying. Right? So on the tax administration side, we have to improve a hell of a lot to be able to get the number that we are looking at, which I think what I said is about 4 trillion rupees of taxes. And cutting expenditure, the only possible way that I see right now is on the state-owned enterprise restructuring, so that if it is cost-reflective tariffs on both utilities and in fuel, the transfer of tax money into these entities will stop. Now, as chairman of the committee, I had to go through this terribly disturbing meeting last week, where the Treasury came and saw 235 billion rupees of taxpayer money to pay off petrol bills or diesel bills of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Sri Lankan Airlines. To clean up their balance sheets, so perhaps they could be put up for restructure. And now, that money need not come from taxpayers if it can ensure, those entities can ensure that their not making these massive losses. The last point I want to make is going beyond, and I think Peter in his sort of press briefing said growth is subdued. Unless we get growth going again, I see Anura looking at me, and he's always telling me about the tourism industry, the opportunities that are available in the short term, but where is real growth going to come from? Where is growth going to come from? And what is the plan to get growth going, right? And again, because Tanya is right in front of me on the screen, what is the plan going to be for 85% of entities in this country, contributing to more than 50%? Those are the SMEs. How are we going to link them to global production networks? What is the big plan? To what extent is our ideology going to change from a closed economy, looking inwards, having large para-tariffs and massive border taxes, to one that is open and is dynamic as sort of a hub of production of goods and services? So then that is where we need to start thinking about liberalizing services. For instance, we were talking to some people, German business people the other day, say, why wouldn't DHL come and set up a hub in this country? Because they can't get any investments into services of logistics and freight forwarding and things like that. So I'm just taking one example, is that unless we are able to break the shackles that we have put on this economy, we are not going to move away from this subdued growth story that we are talking about, right? So whether the budget is going to show us the direction of where the president wants to take this country in terms of sort of, reforms, restructures, liberalizing, then we will be back to this same sort of discussion in a year's time, right? So that's how I see it. It is going to be a very, very, very difficult budget to present, given that elections are due in less than a year. He will have major political battles to be fought, and I don't know whether he will win them or not. But that is the hard reality, Arun.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha de Silva, and your perspectives, I think, are well taken. We now move to the next of our keynotes, which is to be presented by the country manager for Ernst & Young, Sri Lanka and the Maldives, and also serving currently as the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and that's Duminda Hulangamuwa. So, Duminda, we invite you now to take over and proceed with your thoughts and ideas, expectations for budget 2024.
Good evening, Arun. Can you hear me? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would first like to thank the International Chamber of Commerce for inviting me this evening to take part in this pre-budget panel discussion. Because more discussions are post-budget, so it's good to have a pre-budget panel discussion. So I listened to Harsha, and I think part of my presentation was also what he has already said, is that we see that this budget is going to present out a very difficult and challenging times. As Harsha said, the recurrent expenditure for next year estimated is about 2.7 trillion, which is 50% for salaries and 50% for other pensions and subsidies, and an income of around 4 trillion. So I think the current year, in my view, the income might end up with about 3 trillion. But we were slightly above the expenditure and might have a small surplus in the primary account. But having said that, the biggest challenge that we have is the interest expenditure of 2.7 trillion budget for next year. So how do you finance the budget with a gap of about 3 or 4 billion, which will come from borrowings. So the more we borrow, again, the interest cost will go up. So this is a very difficult situation for the government. Is one of the worst periods we presenting a budget. And on the income side, there is, in my view, from Ceylon Chamber's perspective, there's hardly any room on the income side to increase the tax rates any further. The VAT rates have gone up 18%, the personal income tax at 36%, corporates are all at 30%, SSL is about 2.5%. So I think there is no space both on the income tax side and the VAT side for the government to increase revenue. So if you increase revenue further, there'll be further contraction. As we have opined to the government in our closed-door meetings we had in the last 2 weeks, both the president and the other officials, is that the space for revenue increases is not there anymore, because if you increase the revenue beyond this point in terms of tax rates, the economy will start contracting further. And if there's contraction, there is not going to be revenue coming up anyway. So I think we have listened to all the expenditure side, revenue side, the challenge the government is having. So all that is sort of known, and what do we do is a question. How do we go on a growth path, or is there opportunity for growth in the short to medium term? So the Ceylon Chamber prediction is that the opportunity for growth at the moment is very limited, for the reason that we are still also not completed our debt restructuring. Hopefully it can happen by end of the year, or maybe next year, or the foreign debt part. If that does open out, and if we are able to do the foreign debt restructuring, the only hope we have is from there is, in addition to the interest reduction that may come from it, is the fiscal space that you get on the interest rate reduction. And number two is whether we can commence some of the bilateral projects that have come to a standstill. Projects are there, the Katnayaka Expressway, the Katnayaka Airport, the Central Expressway. All those projects that came to a standstill can commence if bilateral funding start coming again for those projects. And that will be quite substantial if they can do the short term, because we have got assurances from those high commissions and embassies that if the debt restructuring is done, they can commence bilateral funding again. You can start those projects. That is assuming, I'm assuming the government wants to continue those projects, and we'll have to borrow funds from bilateral agencies for that purpose. The other than that, the space for growth, a lot of been talked about exports, but as you know, export growth won't happen overnight. It will take some time. It will be a medium to long-term strategies to grow exports. We have been engaging with the Indian Minister of Finance, she was here last week, and then we spoke to the Confederation of Indian Industry and the FICCI, all Indian delegation that came last week, to see how we can expand in the short term the FDI basket to India, whether we can increase, for example, the number of pieces of garments that go from Sri Lanka to India in the short term. In the next year, if we can do that, then the sluggish demands that we are currently facing from the western side of the world, we might be able to overcome and replace some of those export orders with India if we can. So those discussions and negotiations are going on. We made those teams. I hope if there is some kind of opening there, then Sri Lankan exports can go to India. Because otherwise, it's very difficult for Sri Lanka to enter with new products to the Indian market, given the cost structure in Sri Lanka. The other area that we feel that is the lowest hanging fruit that we can have some kind of impact in the shortest period of time is tourism. And we have pointed out to government what areas needs to be improved. Certain laws need to be liberalized. Certain relaxations have to be given to the tourism industry, in addition to the promotion I'm saying. Because tourism, if you can get the number from about 2 million to 3.5, 4 trillion, irrespective of how much they spend with the high spending or low spending tourists. If you can get those numbers up, because we have a reasonable infrastructure that we can cater to with the current structure is fairly okay to cater to. Only we need to increase the number of flights and arrange the airport. But I think still, in spite of the current the structure, we should be able to get some kind of mileage on the tourism side, and that will be the shortest possible where we can increase foreign currency, plus also give employment to some of the people in the SME sector. The other area that we think that can have short to mid-term benefit is the BPO IT industry. We have still about 100,000 people coming out of the university system, both private and non-private university system. Even if there are people who are migrating from Sri Lanka, skilled people who are migrating, we still have a large sector that is still coming out, and we can get those people trained. We have been talking to some of the institutions to see how we can develop the skills of these people so they can go into the market very fast, and there are so many people. In fact, even the organizer I represent has a big BPO center here. We are struggling to find people to take from 400 to 1,000 is our target this year. I don't think we can go anywhere near half of that because we don't have the people. So if these institutions can develop, so we have given a proposal to the government on the skills development and how, for example, all the technical colleges that are around the country, there are about 208 technical colleges and skills development centers run by government at very poor quality standards, how they can be given to the private sector under PPA. There are enough people to take them over PPA and then train these people and put them to the market as soon as possible. So there's enough opportunity there. So we are trying, we have given a proposal, we have talked to government to see how the skills of the people can be trained fast and put to the industry and the market so that we can create opportunity in those areas. So that is again is a medium to a short, not a short term, but a medium term strategy that we have given. The other area we think is commercial agriculture because there is so much of land still available with government, both JDB owned and SPC owned lands in the plantation sector which are not utilized properly, and there are agricultural lands that are available with government which are not utilized. So we have asked government, we identified the areas of investment that can go into it and request the government to see how we can encourage commercial agriculture, not just 10 acres, 15 acres, but how we can go commercial agriculture by someone giving some of these lands to the private sector. And I believe there is an announcement of land reform that will come in this year's, in the budget that we presented on Monday. That will unlock a lot of land. I'm not talking of land in Colombo that can be unlocked for urban development because there's saturation in that market at the moment. So we don't think there's an upward tick in that area, but we think on agriculture side, there is upward movement. So we can use the lands in the commercial agriculture sector for development. And the other area is that we have given a proposal to government on areas to liberalize. If you know, currently Sri Lanka has restrictions on certain areas where foreigners can be involved. As Harsha briefed on certain things, but there are large areas where foreigners are still restricted. So we have given a proposal subject to certain restrictions to our local industry, how those areas can be liberalized further. For example, education can be liberalized further, plantation sector can be liberalized further, how investments can be liberalized, laws can be liberalized in those sectors to invite foreign investment because we can't give tax incentives anymore. If that is the case, we have to make sure that the doing business indexes are improving. We need to make sure that we have the shortest possible time of registration of a company and then take it over. So those are some of the proposals that we have given to government to see some element of growth happening in the short to medium term. Because the budget restrictions are all known and we know the income figures. There's little space to increase revenue. There's a lot of, Arun, just 1 minute. There's a lot of reference to increase in tax base, but in my view, being a practitioner the last 10 years, how soon that would happen, I don't know. It might take 2-3 years to increase the base from now to say 400,000 tax base to 1 million, 2 million tax base. So we are working on those limitations. So we have to make sure, therefore, we have proposals. We can be critical, but we have to make sure we take a part in this process and contribute towards suggesting how we can achieve growth in the short term and then in the long term. Thank you, Arun. I see you. My time is up.
Thank you very much, Duminda. We appreciate very much that you already have engaged with the Finance Ministry and Treasury and so on and so forth in your proposals and ideas with regard to what the budget should contain has already been communicated. Well, time will tell. We have a banker's viewpoint coming up now, and we are pleased to have the third of our keynotes presented by Mr. Bingumal Thevarathanthri, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Standard Chartered Bank, Sri Lanka, and also is serving currently as the Chairman, Sri Lanka Banks Association. So, Bingumal, we'll invite you now to address this audience.
Thanks, Arun. First of all, I would like to thank ICC for inviting for me this for this event. I think a lot being said about the whole revenue challenge and the interest challenge, so I don't want to dwell too much into that. Just want to make one point that Sri Lanka is probably the highest in terms of revenue perspective, because I think even next year, 70% of our, looking at the numbers that Harsha and Duminda presented, looks like that at least 40-45% of a revenue increase is critical. And we've not seen many countries increasing revenues by 40% in 1 year. So I completely agree with Duminda's comment in terms of the broadening and the collection might take time. So in that context, sadly, I mean, I will basically come up with 2-3 recommendations. Also give a bit of a background, a brief on the banking sector and where we are as well in terms of how we can contribute as well. Sadly, we might see a lot of indirect taxes that has gone up already. Withholding tax can be another one. Probably you can take it up and call it a final tax. I mean, this was recommended by a few others as well recently. A couple of think tanks spoke about this. I think that's one low-hanging fruit, because that's one way of grabbing at least some amount of revenue straight away from day one. Apart from that, from a banking sector perspective, how we can contribute on the broadening, proposition, because digitization is the way to go, no doubt about it. Sadly, we've taken a lot of time even to look at a proposal. I think now we are in the process of looking at a proposal, and to implement that proposal will take another 6 to at least 1 year in my view, and to see real benefits it might take 2 to 3 years. So India has taken more than 4 years to see real benefits from Aadhaar. So it's not going to happen overnight. So during that time, I mean, we also don't believe that we can open tax files for everybody above 18. That's not going to be very practical, because we only have limited resources and in revenue. So if we can have some controls, some controls, few gatekeepers. I mean, bankers can act as gatekeepers on many of these things. So one is like when clients come for loans and credit cards, we can always ask for a tax file. I think that's not complicated. I mean, we have more than 1.5 million credit cards in the market, many loans, personal loans. From this, you can actually capture the larger part of the professionals and personnel who are not in the payee bracket. So that piece you can probably look at capture through banks acting as an agent to asking for a tax files. The other important thing is I know SME sector is going through a lot of stress, but you also have to acknowledge that everyone has to pay a tax at some point. So it's very important that we restrict business transactions on personal accounts. I think there is a guideline now, but we have to implement that guideline very strictly. Bankers also should take responsibility, and regulators can make us responsible as well. That's how the OECD markets runs. You can't direct a corporate or business transaction on a personal account. That's very common in some of the sectors in Sri Lanka. We have all experience when you buy stuff and deal with some of the entities, they'll always give you a personal account to deposit money. The other important area for the emerging corporates and some of the SMEs, I mean, banks can again act and the regulators can play a role. Again, these are standard practices in OECD and some of the other emerging markets, where you track the audited financials and the management accounts. So we get a set of management accounts and we look at it. So there's profits, net worth, good turnover, and we lend to that book. Management accounts. We also have some set of audited financials. That audited financials will always understate the profits and turnover and net worth and things like that. But bankers sadly tend to ignore some of these discrepancies. And we also have a lot of mom and pop shops, doing audited financials in this country, hundreds. So I think one important aspect is banks have to identify, red flag that account, downgrade that account, price it up, report to the central bank, and then central bank should report that to the CA or some other organization. Strict action should be taken. If you produce, bogus reports in markets like US, your license is cancelled. You won't be able to certify accounts again. And if you lend to a client where you got massive discrepancies in the accounts, banks are responsible, not on the bank. Even the CEOs, the board of directors can be personally responsible for some of these malpractices. So code of conduct from the banker's side also could be something that we can look at. The other recommendation is there had been recommendations to demonetize the 5,000 because there's a lot of cash in the market. I think that's in a very difficult situation like this. It's not very practical. We done this in the early 70s. I think India did it recently, but the economy was doing very well when India government demonetized the currency. But I think for us, we can always restrict cash. We can restrict cash. We have more than, I think, millions of debit cards in the system. We have checkbooks in the system. We have SEFT system to transfer money. There's no reason to carry shiploads of cash for your business. So I think it's very, very important that we have a 500,000 cap right now, but that doesn't work. Sadly, a lot of businesses operate on cash. They hold cash, they buy on cash. So this cash economy has really, put certain people away from the tax net. So these are some of the recommendations that the banking sector is proposing, because digitization and the broadening and digital VAT files, the tax files would take some time for the country to implement. A few other areas, because I'm only talking about low-hanging fruits and what we can do in the next 18 months, so short to medium term, because we're running out of time. The other one is actually FDIs. So we have a BOI pipeline at the moment. BOI had been accumulating pipeline deals, investments. I think we have to look at least the low-hanging fruits of those BOI pipeline investment of those transactions, and make sure under the one-stop shop and execute those really fast and get that money in. Of course, the SOE reforms and restructuring also can play a role, because some of these SOEs will attract foreign investments. So that's direct inflows coming into the country. Now, one other low-hanging fruit, especially under the FDI pipeline, that I would like to mention is the wind power opportunity we have, the best kept secret in Sri Lanka. So Mana North, that basin alone has about 40 gigawatts wind power opportunity. We will need only a couple of gigawatts for Sri Lanka in the next 5 to 10 years. So from that perspective, I think we might have to export that. So there are multiple investors waiting, knocking on our door, asking for for an opportunity to invest in Sri Lanka. I mean, there are multiple challenges. Land is limited. You might have to go offshore. There are environmental hazards. So we have to look at the tax structures, royalties, etc. But we have to get it right. I'm talking about multi-billion-dollar export opportunity in the medium term. This is not a long-term thing. This is not like something you have to develop an industry, build a brand, go to the market, find buyers, then you grow by 10, 12%. I strongly believe that the current export basket and growing that export basket it's about $1 billion for a month. From $1 billion to $2 billion is going to take some time, sadly. Unless we do market expanding FDIs, where you get into trade treaties like RCEP and India and China, we connect with all these countries, and you bring an investor to supply to these large economic zones. Unless you do that kind of a market expanding FDIs, I don't think organically we can be a large export market overnight. It's going to take some time. One last recommendation, again a low hanging fruit, because there been a lot of discussions around, can we cut the government expenditure? Always when you go into discussions, we hear, can we cut the government by half? I don't think that's very practical. So what we can probably do is, of course, natural attrition will help, but there's 1.6 million people in the government. Why don't we repurpose? We have 1.6 people. We have, I think, 200,000 plus in the military. Why don't we repurpose those resources and make use of them and put them into specific segments, like taking the tourism to the next level. Revenue collection, we always complain saying, oh, we don't have enough resources to collect revenues. We don't know how to go about. We don't have enough resources to digitize. We have enough resources in the government already. So we are urging the government to repurpose resources, then right size, of course, which with natural attrition. We can come up with golden handshakes and we get a little bit of money. But I think repurposing and right sizing is the way to go. We can use the current existing government cadre to increase the revenues and be more productive. And we strongly believe that the government salary bill might not come down solely because currently the government servants are paid very low salaries. So even if the cadre comes down, you might have to pay a little bit more for the existing good resources, and also to attract all these Gen Zs and the millennials into the government sector. And sadly, that's not happening. One last point, I think Duminda also touched on. The youngsters leaving. We urge that not to impact the junior levels of the corporate sector, because the impact of collecting taxes from that sector is very, very minimal. If I give you numbers very quickly, I think we are expecting something like 120 billion rupees of tax revenues. Out of that, 35,000 employees pay something like 100 billion. Those are the numbers. So the balance 25 paid by another 150,000 employees who are really junior. So by just taxing them, we are just pushing them out, because the currency has depreciated, inflation has gone up, now settled down, but it's base effect, and of course the prices have not come down drastically. So you are really, and your taxes have gone up, your disposable income is low. So as a result of that, sadly, your expenditure, your buying power has come down. So the growth is also slow. We also spoke about taxes and the impact to the growth on the banking sector. One last thing before I go, in terms of ask, I know there had been conversations around continuous moratoriums for some of the sectors. We believe that some sectors have recovered already. Some sectors have gone out of business, sadly. Now the next set of sectors that we are seeing getting into vulnerabilities, like to construction sector is going through a very difficult time now. And also the supply chain of the apparel sectors, the subcontractors, supply chain suppliers of some of these apparel companies are now finding it difficult to operate. So those sectors, and of course some of the import-driven SMEs who are now, their volumes have come down by 30-40%, and their bank debts are still there, so they are struggling. So we have to be very careful in terms of going into standard moratoriums, because we have seen three types of clients in this whole moratoriums. I think we gave 2 trillion worth of moratoriums to 1 million entities and clients, and we've seen some take in the moratorium diligently, paying it because they had some amount of cash flows. There's another set of clients who took the moratorium. They restructured the loan, but sadly some of these loans were restructured at high interest rates because rates were high at the time. Now they don't see the cash flows to manage these assets, so they might have to go into a further restructuring. I completely agree with some of those entities. I mean, we might have to. We are actually asking the banks to careful looking at your own portfolios and look after those vulnerable clients, because they will take some time to recover. They want to pay, but they can't pay. There's a third category. They've taken the moratorium and they've spent the money on other things, and they don't want to pay, and they're asking for longer term moratoriums. I think that category, you might have to take legal action. So we don't support standard moratoriums for sectors, but we support looking at individual clients and supporting them. And if the support is not coming, I request those entities to reach out to the regulators and policymakers and make your case, because banks are supposed to sit and discuss. Because also I have to tell you, the banks have no intention to come after your land and property and acquire lands and become a landowner. So those are some of my sentiments, but very quickly, banking sector is stable. I just want to emphasize that we are one of the best sectors out of the countries that have gone through restructuring in the last 10 years. It's a hell of a surprise that banking sector is in this state now. We got a double-digit ROT, and our bad loans are now plateauing. We can see the bad loans hovering around 13.5, and the net NPL ratio is now around 7.7. Pretty stable in the last 3 months. We believe we hit the bottom. So the end is near. We just have to be patient. Thank you very much.
I think we are deeply grateful for those remarks from Bingumal Thevarathanthri, who, as we've mentioned before, is the chairman of the Sri Lanka Banks Association. And we've had a perspective which might be referred to as practical, very practical. And we also were treated to some of the cautions that are relevant. And at the same time, a lot of positivism was also heard, that there are possibilities that do exist, and those recommendations have been forwarded, and hopefully they will see fruition in the days ahead with regard to being included in the proposals for the following year. But yes, it was interesting to hear this matter about the cash as well, and the reliance on cash and the negative effect that can have. Well, those are 3 of our keynotes sounded. Next, it will be our panel. But just before we have that conversation, we would like to focus a little while again on our sponsor. from the budget 2024. That's where we are now, back again with our continuing panel discussion. So in the panel, we have quite a number. We have Mr. Premnath Dolavatta, who's a member of parliament and also serves as a member of COP and COPF. Then too, we have Tanya Abesundara, who's the chairperson, Sri Lanka United National Business Alliance, or SLUNBA. We have Haja Alafafi Ladel, who is the managing director, Unilever Sri Lanka. Then Anuj De Silva, partner at EY and also chairs WCIC. A past president of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, Mr. Anura Lokuhetti. Then too, we have Ashish Chandra, who is the managing director of Airtel Sri Lanka and is the secretary of the India CEO Forum. Then we have Ashik M. Ali, who is the director, Taliance, and is a past chairman of SLASCOM. Mr. Sujiva Mudalige, no stranger to these webinars with ICCSL. He's a former country head of PricewaterhouseCoopers Sri Lanka. So Sujiva Mudalige is also in the panel, as is Kanishka Mannakara, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the CAL Group. And taking this conversation in the first part will be an economist, an academic and management consultant, Talal Rafi. So for the next hour and a half or so, we shall have Talal take over the proceedings. So Talal, over to you.
Thank you, Arun. Hi, everyone. I'm Talal. I'll just start off with Hajar, as she has to leave shortly. Hajar, considering the consumers have been hit in several ways, higher interest rates, high inflation, though it's come down drastically, an increase in VAT expected next year, and energy costs. How is the FMCG sector working, and what are your expectations for this budget?
Thank you, Talal. And firstly, I'd like to congratulate the keynote speakers for a very poignant and candid speech, Dr. Harsha, Mr. Duminda, and Mr. Bingumal. I'll speak about the consumer side. Firstly, we need to know that we are going to start 2024 in a market that has contracted by about 25%. That means that the demand has shrunk by 25%. And sadly, whilst we have seen a good recovery between the second and the third quarter, we see that in this quarter, where we are now, October, November, December, consumers are back to that pattern where they are not able to spend. And this has come just after, and maybe just to repeat some of the numbers that you guys know, as we speak, fuel cost has increased by 15%. Gas cost has increased also by about 16%. Electricity has also increased for companies, and then for personal, probably we expect something around 40%. We do expect prices of things like sugar in particular to increase. So we do see that the consumer is back again into a watch and see and cannot spend. This will go into a worse situation the moment the VAT will increase to 18%. Because simply put, when you and I or any consumer are paying every good more expensive, we certainly go to reduce our shopping basket. So really, this is how we start 2024 from a consumer sector. This needs to be said together with two factors that has come as a consequence of the crisis of 2022, where the poverty has doubled. So that is still a fact. And we know that about 5% of Sri Lankan have left the country. So if I may, I think 2024 is an acid test for our country. And, I look forward to the solutions that the government will bring. From my side, where I think we need to put our effort, we really have to make sure that we continue to stabilize our policy. This has served us well in 2023. So probably not having any abrupt decision-making or any sudden change to policy, because this is quite a killer for investors. boosting the confidence by making sure that the inflation is contained. So I totally agree with Duminda. If the tax continue to increase instead of broadening the tax net, we will see the economy contracting. The growth of economy means that the demand is high inside Sri Lanka. And that creation of demand is what we are after. And really to create this environment that is conducive for business and to increase the ease of doing business, I do agree, and everyone has said it, digitization is a low-hanging fruit. Digitization will mean speed, access to market, FDI confidence. And I think there are two parts of digitization. One is the infrastructure, and I think Duminda or Bingo has said it, we have the people, we have the brains, but we need the adoption. We need also people that want to work digitally, because that means more transparency, of course, and two hands cannot meet. Therefore, the cost of doing business will also be better. I think whilst I speak about digitization, the other low-hanging fruit is probably tourism. So I think the relaxation of policies when it comes to tourism, actually, there could be an advantage for Sri Lanka when it comes to tourism, as people now may be wary to go to Egypt and Jordan and might be choosing countries that are in Asia due to the pending war that is happening in the Middle East. So for me, these are really two low-hanging fruits that we need to work on: digitization, tourism. And the last one is really IT and logistics. So I think creating a service hub is very important, and that could be also a quick win. The last point which I'd like to speak of, Talal, is the importance of, in 2024 to thread the needle between economy and politics extremely carefully. I think there is also a possibility here where politics gets meddled with economy, and that really sends the growth even into a toss. Therefore, making sure that we all take the right decision for the economy, for the stability of this country, and not going into havoc like 2022, for me is really mission critical. And this is where the private sector can really play a role. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Harsha. Just another question before I let you go. It's like when you look at, Sri Lanka has been focused or has to forced into focusing on an export-oriented economy. So 64% of global exports come from multinational companies. As you head one of Sri Lanka's most important multinational organization, what would be like one good thing you would say to an MNC that wants to invest here about Sri Lanka, and one challenge?
Well, firstly, I think there are many opportunities for MNCs to come and be established in Sri Lanka. We have been here for 85 years. And we continue to enjoy really a degree of growth, which is amazing. So I must firstly say that everything being relative, we are, doing well in the country. So what's working well? Firstly, we have one of the best workforce, I believe, in this side of the continent. Our workforce is accessible and is very productive. I think the level of English speaking is something which we need to be proud of, and multinationals need that acumen of language as well, because it just gives the speed and the ease of doing business. Thirdly, I think Bingumal has spoken about it. Our banking system is already digitized, already linked to one of the best European practices. So it's very easy for a multinational to just ride on that. I think if you compare Sri Lanka to other countries like Africa, or it's a no-brainer. We have everything we need for growth. The last one I'd like to speak of, because that consumer sector you speak of, is all our products are certified following EU laws, US laws. So it's not as if when a company comes here, they need to do everything from scratch. So it's a very easy way for the companies to come in. Now, the challenge, since you spoke about challenges, maybe the issue is really still digitization, because companies would like speed, and that comes in the way when you know that there are still many papers to be done. Nonetheless, I would recommend for all the FDI to come through the BOI, the Board of Investment, where you can enjoy lots of facilities, speed of decision making is really there. And we are also a BOI company. The second thing is what we said, policies can be changed because we know that we are still in a crisis market. So a little bit of patience. That said, I think our government has done a good work in 2023, and hopefully that shall continue. So if I put it in a balance, Talal, I think there are more opportunities to put in our country rather than obstacles. So everything being relative, we are a great company or country to invest in.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you for the optimistic message. Thanks. So the next question, I'll go to Sujiva. Sujiva, I'll ask you on the expenditure side. So one of the key things we heard from Harsha also, the high expenditure here. So in 2021, we saw that, a large portion of government revenue went to salaries and pensions of state sector workers, which is quite unsustainable. But in mid-2000s, the number of public sector workers was only 700,000. So now it's gone to 1.4, and the population obviously hasn't grown that much. So is there any way we can reduce, in your views? It's a difficult one, but...
That's a difficult one. Everyone wants to talk about revenue measures and so on. No one generally, no politician will touch on reducing expenditure, Talal. And that has been done by successive governments. Because it's the most unpopular thing to do. And I think time has come for us to be bold enough to say, look, we got to rationalize our expenditure. And we had successive governments where even heads of states are very proud to say, I increased the number from 1 to 1.1 million. The next one will come and say, I took it from 1.1 to 1.2. So we just kept on doing it. As you said, we have gone from 700 to 1.56, and successive governments are responsible. So if you ask me, see, I'm no labor expert, but there have been many experts who have said that we can manage this country with 1 million people, with 1 million. So that means we have about 500 to 600,000 excess. I think we need to demand the political parties, give us a plan. How are you going to reduce to 1 million, say, over a 10-year period? We are not asking this to be done tomorrow, right? Give us a plan. No politician has given this because this is going to be unpopular. They are going to lose votes, right? We have to demand this, because if you don't do that, what are we doing? We are taxing the private sector, and we are taking that money which is available for investment, refurbishment, development of your products and so on. And we are just taking that, giving to the government for what? Just to pay pension, salaries and interest. Completely unproductive. I mean, allocation of resources. So we have to demand this. Not very many people are talking about this because people are scared to talk about it. And I think, see, the three big culprits are, you have the public administration on top, right? Then you have the finance ministry, and you have the defense, right? Forget about what has been allocated lower down the order. We need to tackle these three. Health and education needs to be upped. I mean, what we are allocating for those two is insufficient, and we have no way out, Talal, to get out of this rut if we don't invest in health and education. We need a healthy population and we need an educated population. So we have to increase, and it's not by taxing. And I think all the other speakers have said there is no way to increase the revenue side. So how do we do that? We got to reallocate. So this has to be done. And I think we need to demand, when the next round of elections come, how are you going to resize, reprofile, rebalance the workforce over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's just one point. I have the second point, which I just want to touch on, Talal, which is an important one. I was shocked to see some of the numbers in the tourism sector on the debt that they are carrying. In 2018, believe it or not, we had 300 billion debt. Now, in 2022, it has gone up to 600 billion. Right? And this is during a time where they didn't borrow, right? And during a time where we had the Easter Sunday attacks, we had the COVID, then we had the social unrest, where tourism was at a low ebb, and the tourism debt has gone up to 600. We will end up this year at about 700, Talal. And without you and I realizing, we'll be at $1 trillion debt. And all the banks are very happy charging interest on interest, penal interest, whatever it is. And the banks need to realize this debt is unsustainable, just like the country's debt. Just like the country's debt, this debt in the tourism sector at 700 billion, close to 700 will end up this year, is completely unsustainable. Just look at, say you earn this year, say $1.5 billion from tourism, we'll say, right? That's 500 billion rupees, right? 500 billion. Say the tourism sector makes a net profit of 10% on that. They made 50 billion. 50 billion is not enough even to pay the interest, because you have 700 billion of debt. So my one request for, and I know Dinesh is working behind the scenes on this, I'm very happy to note that, is that I think urgently a committee needs to be appointed with the banks participating, with the tourism sector officials and so on. Relook at this debt, because this debt cannot be repaid. $1 trillion in 2 years, $1 trillion rupee debt in tourism cannot be repaid and will not be paid. So we got to make sure the banks are stable. It doesn't impact the banks, and the sector is given some kind of lifeline, so that they have to go and refurbish this. If you have to get 4 million tourists, they have to go and refurbish these properties. They just don't have the financing to do that. So I'll stop that. I don't want to go too much into it. But the main thing is this debt in the tourism sector is completely unsustainable at the moment.
Thank you, Sujiva. That was very useful. I'll next move on to Member of Parliament Premnath. Hi. So you're representing Colombo. So poverty rates have gone very high. So in your view, what are some of the things you can come up with, especially considering the expectation from the budget?
Thank you, Talal. I'm not a scholar on this subject, but anyhow, that I can blend with the grassroots level people, how they behave in these last few months and last year. Actually, we have identified 18,400 severe malnutritious children in the whole entire country, especially when it's come to Colombo district in Cardwell area, where I share this committee on nutrition. We have 2 MOHs. One has a severe, the biggest number of severe malnutritious children. So there are a lot of vulnerable families in Colombo district, even though it's developed in the capital of the country. But actually, we have to ensure about these. We aware that some of these no more. Now we are into Aswasuma. Because of this trade union action with some of the people, the public servant, there are huge issues going on with this Aswasuma thing. Most of the people that they didn't apply on the Aswasuma program, so they thought that while they are engaging with the Samudri program, they don't need to apply on the new program. So ultimately, there are significant number of people that they need the support of the government, but at the moment they don't. So we have to look into that very carefully, because we have to ensure the poor, the vulnerable sector, we have to upgrade their nutrition level, healthcare, and the education level. So it's like, I think we have to emphasize on that. At the same time, when it comes to budget, like after the independence, everybody listened to the budget to have reduce prices for the commodities or whatever the increment in their salaries. So that's a normal practice. But Mr. Talal, I think this will be extraordinary budget, because we had to last time also as a government we had to take unpopular decisions like to maintain the stable government and the economy of this country. But anyway, that even though that we have faced some issues, I think we have to ensure the vulnerable people's day-to-day life, commodity level, their normal day-to-day life. We have to ensure that to increase their living style, whatever said and done. Meantime, we have to, while we are strengthening the economic level of this country, but we have to ensure from this budget about this vulnerable group, because they are facing a serious issue in this time, because they don't have the Samurdhi as well as they don't have the Aswaswa program.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Premnath. I'll come back to you later. Next, I'll move to Kanishka. Yeah. What would be your views on the super gain tax or proposed? And in particular, super gain tax on primary dealers. There has been a lot of talk around this.
I'll talk about, super gains taxes and retrospective taxes in general, rather than different to a particular industry. So look, there's four key pillars of good taxation, right? It's fairness, certainty, convenience, and efficiency. And Sri Lankan governments are sort of notorious for having, implemented these retrospective taxes, which are convenient and efficient for sure, because you're taking taxes out of people who already are in the system, and that makes it easy to collect. But it's not fair, and the biggest issue is certainty. So doing things like this, upsets businesses' capability to, invest into the future. It messes up your planning from a business perspective. And really causes more damage, than benefit to a country in the long run. So really, I do hope, this is not something the Sri Lankan government is considering this time round, because there are so many other ways to raise the money. As I think the speakers rightly noted, we need to go from we need to go from 3 trillion rupees to 4 trillion rupees of tax revenue next year, and that's the challenge. And this trillion rupee delta, in our perspective, can be bridged to a great extent through import taxes. Allowing vehicles to come in. There's pent-up demand. There's likely to be $1 billion of vehicle imports next year if it's allowed. That billion by itself can raise 450 billion rupees of tax revenue. And that plus additional imports, because trade is likely to pick up next year. And frankly, we can afford to have a slightly larger, imports bill next year. As tourism comes back, we've got $6 billion likely in worker remittances. We're likely to get about $3 billion inflow from tourism, assuming we can go back to about 2.5-3 million tourists next year. We've got $2.5 billion coming in from IT, BPO sector, and transport. So you've got about $11.5 billion surplus on our services sector. And at the moment, this year we are running into up to September, the figures have been released. The trade deficit was about $3.5 billion. And this year we are probably looking at a $5 billion trade deficit. Now that can widen next year, and it will naturally widen as tourists come in. We have to buy more imported goods. But the government there has a key opportunity to charge, obviously not extortionate taxes. You need to keep this competitive, but that additional imports that will naturally occur, and which actually we need to encourage Sri Lanka to once again start trading and go away from COVID-induced a shutdown of that import economy. That we can create the additional tax revenue that the government so desperately needs. And in our opinion, this trillion rupees, 700 billion or so, can be bridged through import duties between vehicles and other stuff. And then the additional then you're talking about raising another 300 billion from VAT, from withholding tax, etc. So I think there is a need to focus on the big ticket items rather than doing silly things punitively to pick up pennies.
Right. Thank you, Kanish. I'll move on to Anura. So the tourism industry has been contributing for growth for the Sri Lankan economy. So the hotel owners, especially from the SME sectors, have gone through a difficult time. So what is the current position and what are your expectations for the industry?
Thank you, Talal, asking for that question. I think it is very easy for me to also explain now, because Sujiva Mudalige also during his discussion or presentation, he mentioned the problems that are faced by the tourism industry. As you know, tourism is the way forward for the economic growth of this country. And it is the easiest to, everyone says it is the low-hanging fruit, which is very true. And in 2018, we had 2.3 million tourists and 4.5 billion US dollars. If you look at the net revenue from tourism is the second best net foreign exchange earner for the country. And it can become the number one foreign exchange earner for this country. And tourism does not create any issues for the environment. It will preserve the environment. So it's the best industry to sustain. And as you know, considering its multiplier effect, it provides employment for at least 600,000 directly and indirectly. And also it provides livelihood for at least 2.4 million people, which is about 12% of the total population of this country. So what are the issues now the tourism sector is faced with? You know, tourism is the most sector that get affected with anything. May it be a war, may it be tsunami, may it be terrorism or COVID or economic crisis. So we have got battered over the years. I'm in this industry for 45 years now. And so it has been a very bumpy ride. But still, we know that this is the best industry for this country's economic growth. Most of the hoteliers consist of the SME sector, which is even more than 70% of the total industry. And most of these people have borrowed money from the banks. And we get a loan after submitting a feasibility report. So banks looks at very carefully and then they give us loans. So what happened? Somebody who has taken a loan somewhere in 2016 or 17 lost 4 years. And during that time, they accumulated the capital repayment into another loan, interest into another loan. So if you have, supposing if you have borrowed about $2 million, now you are ended up to pay maybe more than what you have borrowed already after paying for maybe a year or two. So this is a very, very unfortunate situation. And then some of the banks have requested these monies to be paid within 63 months or 60 months. So you have to pay, some properties have to pay more than $65,000, $70,000, and they are small and medium sector properties, and they cannot even have month revenue of same. So as Sujiva very clearly mentioned, the debt has got doubled by not people borrowing, but accumulating the interest and the capital. So it is time to really relook at this whole affair and reschedule these loans, and also provide some kind of grace period at least until mid next year. Now, this year we may get about 1.5 million tourists, and we can get about $2.7 million revenue. But if you really look at it right now, majority of the guests are coming from Russia, right? So and the rates are yet very low. And in the meantime, what happens if you look at our cost of production, or on the other hand, running a hotel, electricity has gone up thrice, and then the food prices. And if you have borrowed in dollars, a dollar has appreciated so much. And that time when they borrowed in dollars, we were able to collect in dollars. And sometimes when you say our price list, if we can price it in US dollars or something, then the client will not feel that it's so much. When you put it in rupees, it is sometimes 4 figure. It could go even up to 5 figures if it is a proper important stake or something like that. So there are so many issues. So what we anticipate from this budget, number one, is for us to get some kind of a grace period until middle of next year, and then thereafter reschedule it for at least 10 years. As far as the banks are concerned, I'm sure it is not going to have any impact, because how they earn revenue is also by giving money to investors. So none of us are saying we are not going to pay, but now we have prepared new feasibility reports according to our cash flows, and they must accept it. And then they must support us. Otherwise, what are we going to do? I was very happy to hear from Bingumal that the banks are not real estate agents. We know it very well. But most unfortunately, even if a bank take over a hotel, there is nothing people can do. But it's not our intention. We are in tourism, and we need this industry to grow well. We are only asking more than new investment. These people have already invested in that. And entire village economy is dependent upon this one hotel, perhaps in a small area. Its multiplier effect is amazing. Every tourist who comes to this country provides at least jobs for 11 people. It is the largest industry in the world with regard to civil industry. So most of the European countries, that region has already recovered from COVID. The lowest recovery is in the Asian region. That is because it is long haul travel. And as we know that our airline prices are very high. And also look at our situation. When you look at Thailand or Malaysia, their prices and our prices, the tourists want to look at the country in terms of what is the affordability. If we increase, we can, presently the hotels are selling at a rate to attract the tourists. It doesn't mean to say it gives profit. So all the banks and everybody is saying, okay, it is recovering fast, true enough, guests are coming. But financially, we are not really recovering. So we need little time, because maybe when the demand increases, then there will be opportunity for us to increase the price. It's basic economy. There is no rocket science. So what we are asking to give us little bit more time until maybe mid next year, and reschedule the loans, and do not kill this important industry, and also the SME sector particularly. Our other issue is, now when we go and our hotels are 4 years, we have had no businesses. The hotels maintenance costs are extremely high. So some of the products are now require large amount of monies to be reinvested to get provide the customers with that kind of quality of services. For that, there must be some kind of funds made available for them to use at a lower interest rate or something, to see that these products can be improved. But it is a bad thing to ask from a bank now, because the loans already taken are not being paid, and requesting rescheduling and going and asking for another loan is sometimes people can, but this is the reality of the industry today. So if we don't understand our issue, then we can't find a solution. Other issue is this electricity. They go on increasing every time. But we have already contracted with the tour operators to sell a room at a particular price. So our revenue is fixed for maybe next 1 year. And sudden increases of this kind of cost, it is impossible. So if you are going to sustain this industry and go forward, there must be some kind of a special facility provided to at least SLTDA registered hotels, not to increase the electricity cost for at least period of 1 year. The other main issue that we are faced with, for this refurbishment, we require items. Some are not available in Sri Lanka. So we need some kind of tax relief on those, so that at least duty free for the items that are required for the hotel refurbishment. Then we also have another major issue in this industry for last so many years. We have been charged 1% of the total turnover as the local authority tax. Now, all other industries pay 6,000 rupees, may it be a bank, may it be a garment factory. Every other person pays only 6,000 per annum, and we have to pay 1% of the. And there are more than 300 cases around Sri Lanka. All local authorities have taken hotels to task. So we have requested, treat us also like any other industry. We are an industry and we provide better employment. So we think country's budget. We are very happy with the government having identified tourism as a main contributor for this country's economy in the short term. So therefore, give the desired support, required support, and sustain this great industry, and so that it will be good for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Anwar. Thanks a lot. So I'll move on to Tanya. I'll ask a couple of questions as she has to leave early. Hi, Tanya. So we already heard from Bingumal that the banking sector is quite stable. So any comments on, so you've been speaking about this, like the interest rates not coming down fast enough. Your thoughts? You're on mute.
Thank you very much, ICC, and thank you very much, the distinguished panelists. I'm the keynote speaker, especially Dr. Harsha. He touched on a lot of things, and the rest of everybody touched on a lot of things, what is very, very important. But most of them, emphasized on the issues and the reality behind the real story. But the reality behind the real story is also a cause caused by itself, we call different entities of the government sector. Now, coming back to the question you asked, it's not only the banking interest that we are faced with. Everything is an issue for the small and medium entrepreneurs at the moment. Not only the bank, the fuel, the electricity, overheads of all utilities, and everything comes into one basket, falling us not to be able to sustain our industries. Now, we have been talking lengthily on taxes and revenue collection and the expenditure. But the reality here is now, like doctor said, we need to collect 4 trillion revenue into the money, because our total expenditure estimated is about 7.8 trillion. So out of that, the 4 trillion, where is it going to come from? So is that 4 trillion gettable? Because they are already borrowing 3.9 out of this 4 trillion, out of the 7 trillion. So the rest of 4 trillion Sri Lankan rupee, where is it going to come from? So if you all are thinking of increasing the taxes, it is never going to be doable, because nearly 30% of the industry that is collecting the most revenue, tax collected revenue, is shut down. And taking 50, if you correctly say, it will be contributing 52% to the country's GDP. And so this market has been contracted forcibly due to the inflation in the country. Now, what I'm trying to tell is very, very simple. All taken into consideration is very true. Now, if you take even to now, how are we going to collect this revenue? For me, it's very, very simple. Like so many panelists said, one way of collecting the revenue is imposing extra tax on imports. Now, recently, there was a sugar import that came into the country. 8 million metric tons. 800,000 metric tons of sugar came into. That's roughly about 8 million kilos of sugar. So the tax was increased on the 1st of November, and they cleared the container on the 29th. So the government lost 400 million rupees in revenue over one import tax not being paid properly. So this is one incident. Same sort of incident took place in last Gotabaya government. Same scenario, the sugar thing was also done. The tax came down from 25 rupees to 35 cents. So this time it was the other way around. So these are conspiracies that happens during every regime. Why is it happening? And where the money can be collected is never been collected. All the pressure is put on the market that cannot sustain no longer. So the consumer market is pressurized. The manufacturers, the small and medium entrepreneurs are being pressurized. Why? For the wrongdoings of the government. This time's budget allocation, if you were to take, there is only $159 billion allocated for industry development. But if you were to take in hold, education, even national security has 367 billion. So all this is taken into consideration, and the output where money can be generated is, developing industries. Now, this country has turned into an import economy. We are only exporting about 10 to 12 billion. And out of that, we import 20 to 22 billion worth of goods into the country. Now, look at the difference. Where are you going to bridge the deficiency? So you are going to bridge the deficiency by taxing the people who are already in a terrible situation. If you take the tourist industry, even now the tourist industry has died a rigorous death. even the construction industry. Now, if you were to take the garment industry where I represent, is self-sufficient with 80%. Now, with the new FTs that have been signed, these imported goods that will come into the country will be, most of them will be tax-free. So then what is going to happen to the manufacturing industry in this country? You all are expecting the government wants to turn all these SMEs into an export-oriented market. How can we ever turn ourselves into an export-oriented market if the government themselves is not looking into us in a possible manner? I mean, in a positive manner where we can be. Like, consumer market has shrunk by 40%, not by 25%. Especially the consumer market last year shrunk by 49%. Now, what happens to the local manufacturers? Everything else has gone haywire due to the dollar. Now, we have been the people who are impacted the most. The manufacturers in this country, exporters were there. Importers will not have that issue if they will import into a higher dollar rate and they will distribute in that. But for us, we can't do that. We are competing with lower stuff that comes into the country with FT, like, tax benefits are being given to them. And we are manufacturing at a higher rate. So with all this consideratively, end of the day, what is happening is the consumer here is being suppressed. The consumer is being put to a wall, and because of the wrong decisions taken overall, the daily decisions being taken. Now, even today's decisions, whatever the government is taking, the central bank in trying to, increase the taxes. How are we going to, sustain our businesses if we were to increase taxes into this magnitude? Right now, the small and medium entrepreneurs are faced in such a huge calamity that our input, that our expenditure is not, doesn't balance with our output. So our overheads have become so much more than our input. So right now, all these companies are going through a bad period of time. If these small and medium entrepreneurs who are contributing 52% to the country's GDP is not being looked after, is not being protected, these revenue that is government is expecting to collect of now last year they have collected 1.2 trillion. So in 2021, the government collected, before the country was called bankrupt, 650 billion. So to be really honest, with the rupee going down, 2.2 trillion is equivalent to 650 billion. The same amount of taxes virtually were collected because the rupee depreciation is the main agenda behind this. So other thing is, one thing I was really impressed, when the one of the panelists mentioned about trying to desequence the $5,000 note. This is something we have been telling the government over and over, because there is so much of black money out there in the market, where because of that we don't have the rupee rotating that comes into a banking sector. So if this is being desequenced, lot of money will come into the banking sector, and that will give the government opportunity to reaping new money or to make the country more stable, because this is what India themselves did. So why can't a country like us do it? This will be a good stepping stone to shut down the black economy that is controlling the Sri Lankan economy itself. If you were to take, end of the day, who is suffering? It's the consumer. And these decisions that have been taken by these entities are never undergoing any of these problems. Who is undergoing these problems are the consumer and the industries who are locally. You have to understand, we as exporters, if you take the garment industry overall, the export industry is 5 billion. And the manufacturing industry in this country is 2.4 billion. So turnover completely combined together, it's about 7 billion, or more than 7 billion. So that's a lot of dollars that comes into the country and dollars that is being stopped going out of the country.
Right.
So if the government, the budget should be looked into more in a friendly and healthy environment towards SME, where the industry, where the budget has been only allocated 1.3 159 billion into that should be at least given twice more, where these industries will be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Tani. I'll come back to you later. So next I'll touch on Ashish. Yeah. So talking about as you're also associated with the Indian CEO Forum, I'll ask you, what are some of the concerns of member countries? As you know, for Sri Lanka to develop relationships and investments from India is a key path ahead for us. So your thoughts, sir?
Sure. So Talal, as a part of India CEO Forum is actually a forum with about 65 Indian business leaders handling more than $5 billion of investment into Sri Lanka and giving employment to nearly about 25,000 people. Now, the whole focus of this forum is to increase the bilateral trade between India and Sri Lanka. And we had been talking to the government, both governments. So our focus is not only the Sri Lankan government, our focus is also the Indian government. How can we increase the trade on both the sides? So as some of the earlier speakers said, it's very important for Sri Lankan business to also start pushing more trade into India. And similarly, we need more trade into Sri Lanka. Now, one of the tools that we had always been professing for quite some time is an INR investment into India. So I think with a lot of efforts, we've been able to get the INR as a designated currency into the country. Now, I think while it has been created as a designated currency, but the flow of INR trade or the opening of escrow accounts and the trade happening on INR is still very restricted. And what we genuinely believe after doing a multiple research on different sectors is that if the INR investment into India, into Sri Lanka can be encouraged, because currently the INR into Sri Lanka is only a trade related and then investments not allowed and other sectors are not allowed for an INR investment. So, and then there is restriction even from an India side that not more than $250,000 of investment by an Indian investor can be done outside India into any other country. So we are proposing saying that can this investment limit be removed if you do an INR investment into Sri Lanka? Now, this will lead to a lot of investment flowing into Sri Lanka in an INR terms. And then the INR availability in Sri Lanka will increase, which will ultimately help both government and the private sector to do trade with India and reduce this balance of payment. So whatever supposed to be paid today in the much less available USD currency can actually be done in INR trade. And we were doing, frankly speaking, few priority sectors like the real estate, where we have a huge inventory. Currently, our estimation is about $200-300 million is the size of the real estate industry. Now, if we open up actually the INR investment into the real estate sector into this country, we see this industry can actually be taken to about $1.5 billion to $2 billion industry if we allow that kind of things. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. As member countries, some of the concerns and our requests to the government to be taken care and in the budget and subsequent policy amendments that's to be done is one, definitely the simplification of the taxation regime. And as a lot of my previous panelists also said that currently the country is going through its own crisis. And I don't know how much more taxation we can actually put up on the consumer side of the business, because beyond a point, if the taxation goes beyond a point, we already seen contraction in the demand. Further more taxation will lead to further contraction of demand, and this spiral will set up in terms of the demand going lesser and lesser, and then the economies in our tailspin. Other thing that we are also looking at is, I think the government needs to also maintain a balance between the taxation that they do and the implementation of those taxations. Because what we see is with increased taxation in some of the industries, which are the member companies that we have, are seeing that the illicit trade is increasing. Okay, the parallel trade is increasing because the taxation on the legitimately created goods are much higher, and the arbitrage becomes much higher, and ultimately government end up losing a lot of revenue because of that. So I think a right balance has to be maintained, and the implementation of the laws to ensure that the illicit trade is not, the parallel trade is not created too much is another thing. And I think last but not the least, some of the member concerns are on the availability of the now the manpower in Sri Lanka, because a lot of talented manpower is leaving the country, and there is a dearth of available resource, especially the skilled manpower. And so has been a demand from a lot of member companies saying that can we ease out the expat norms or the visa norms into Sri Lanka, especially the pharma sector has been demanding it for quite some time, saying can we relax and can we get more skilled manpower from other countries into Sri Lanka to be able to work in this current kind of a scenario. So these are typically the demands and the requirements that the member companies in the India CEO Forum has. But we are very positive about the future and we had been actually very closely working with the Confederation of Indian Industry, FICCI, to invite a lot of Indian investment into Sri Lanka. So that's something that we are doing, Talal.
Right. Thanks a lot, Ashish. I'll move on to Anuj. Hi, Anuj. Yeah. As the
Hi, Talal.
Hi, Anuj. So, as the chairperson of the Women's Chamber, so we see that around 15 billion rupees has been allocated for women's affairs, and of that 90% is recurrent expenditure. So, is this enough for that, and how can we empower through government policies, especially women's business activities?
Yes. So firstly, thank you, Talal. Would like to thank ICC for giving us this opportunity. What I would like to say is, okay, all this money is allocated to women, but the problem that is that this money is never utilized. For the simple reason that the women who this money is supposed to be given to are never able to access these funds effectively also. So I think the government has been talking about this digitalization, and I think one way we can make sure these allocations are utilized in effective manner is through digitalization and also having the right data of who the women who can really make use of the benefit. For example, if you look at some of the data, so about 51% of our population is women, 51.8%. And 64% or more of the university education is consumed by these women. And that means the country is spending a lot of money educating the women, and the return on that money we spent is only around 34 to 36%. So it's very, very inadequate. And the women, the amount of money we spend, and especially at a time like this when the country is going through tough times, just like revenue, one thing we also need to make sure is the money spent by us, we make the best use of that. So if you have a digital, very easy thing to do, and I'm sure we have enough resources to do that. Easily you can do a skill database of women who are skilled women, who are women entrepreneurs, and make these funds. The banks have a lot of funds available for women-owned businesses, which are never utilized half the time, because the banks keep saying they can't really find the right women to give these funds. So if you have these databases available and it's accessible to the public, that's a very, very easy way for all these funds to be utilized properly, and then for the women to really be able to also increase their economic participation to the country. So that's one. So that's really the answer to what you asked, really.
Right. Thank you, Anuj. Then I'll move to Sanjay. Hi, Sanjay.
Sorry, Talal, Sanjay is not on the panel today.
Okay, right, sure. I'll move on to Ashik. Hi, Ashik. So the Ministry of Technology has been allocated 5 billion rupees, but some say when you look at the Ministry of Transport and Highways, that's got around 400 billion rupees. So is there, from the budget, do you think that the digital sector has not been given adequate amounts? And also, if it is, which areas should this money be allocated to?
Talal, so before I jump into that, I'll just do a small background on the landscape. So this has been one of the more resilient industries throughout the last 3-4 years, despite the many challenges that the country faced. Mainly because we deliver, export everything out of digital means. There are no barriers. Most of our people can work from home, and they transitioned into work from home mode. So that has also not been a critical factor in delivering. And beyond that, the demand has consistently, starting from COVID, the demand has consistently, global demand for products and services in the digital space have considerably grown. And it continues to grow, even though many of the developed economies are going through recessionary periods. Still, it calls for more digitization, the new thing is the AI transformation. So there is a lot more things to create more efficiencies and optimization and innovation in most of the sectors. And therefore, we continue to see the demand. Industry, therefore, has not really looked at government provision of funds as such. If at all that money goes, actually should be going into the education sector, because human capital is the raw material for the industry. And therefore, as Sujiva said, the government needs to focus more on the education allocation, because the industry in itself has grown organically and otherwise, and also attracted a fair share of FDI on its own without too much of government intervention, right? And it's true in many other countries, not only in Sri Lanka. So I would say there are 4 areas where we could see a very positive thing that can happen. One is, as I mentioned, human capital development, because even before the crisis, this industry was constrained by supply side, not from the demand side. And therefore, and the 2022 crisis just created a lot more of our talent to migrate out, and that has just created a lot more of this supply constraint. So there's a good education reform piece with the cabinet right now, which will look at both primary, secondary, higher and vocational education. It has some very creative and global thinking gone behind it. And hopefully that will come into being. It's not a short-term solution, it's a medium to long-term solution, but it will set the country in the right path going forward. Then Anuj spoke about women participation. This is one of the industry that can attract a lot more women, both on the entrepreneurial side as well as into the workforce, with very low barriers to entry, flexible working hours. So we can have more women participation. We need to improve that. We are right now at 36% in the IT sector and almost 49% in the BPM sector. But we are doing a lot more awareness and enablement to bring women into it. But beyond that, we can also, I think there is in the education policy, attracting foreign universities here. So there is a leakage of foreign currency, for foreign education from Sri Lanka, but we can also attract foreign students to come in here as well. And, we can be a hub in this region if we can attract some good marquee universities coming here, and also not just only for education, but retain that talent for economic contribution here. In the short term, we are advocating for foreign talent to also be attracted, easing of the visa regime, so that we can, address the short-term demand, but more importantly also get the knowledge transfer, mostly in the emerging technology space, where we need that kind of knowledge transfer from outside. So that's on the human capital development. On the ease of doing business, there's a lot of capital that can be attracted here, not just for large setups, but also in the startup scale-up side. Enable India has almost like 111 unicorn last year, or over the years they have produced. Singapore, Sweden, all of these countries are creating a lot more unicorns. Right now, the policies which are there in terms of attracting family office funds or private equity or venture capital, there are obstacles, there are tax issues there which need to be ironed out, because a large part of this from Sri Lankan startups and scale-ups are happening in either Singapore or Dubai. And once they go and establish an entity out there, all the following valuations that come through as the company grows and expands, will accrue into those countries, and we will only be getting the development dollars into the country, which will be, although it's about 60-70% of the cost, but still we will not get the larger share of the value. The third part is the domestic side, where the company, a lot of us spoke about digitization. So there's a digital strategy being developed by the World Bank Group here, and that will go into play. And that's where this 5 billion was spoken of, because there are certain low-hanging proof of concept projects which the government wants to get done. That's where the 5 billion will get most probably allocated. But the local digitization, just not the UID project, but beyond that, the payments, the connectivity, key economic sectors, the IT BPM sector itself, all of these will are encompassed in that digitization strategy. Right. And lastly, someone spoke about the renewable energy component. As you might know, the technology sector is now one of the top 5 larger carbon footprint industries in the world, and bulk of it is coming from the data centers. And if we have the renewable energy piece sorted, Sri Lanka can be a very good place to attract global data centers to locate here, because we are also having the connectivity through all our CMEV cables, both connecting the east and the west. And a lot of these data centers which are in Singapore are right now actively looking for relocation, because Singapore is tightening the belt on energy, and they don't have the renewable energy piece that Sri Lanka has.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Harsh. So I'll just move on to Sujiva for a quick question, and then Anoji, and then I'll hand it over to Arun so that Dinesh can take over. Yeah. Hi, Sujiva. Sujiva, a question talking about, I asked about the expenditures, about the revenue side. Here, one of the key things is that, a low tax base. So in increasingly making the economy more formal, one of the ideas is that sometimes, making sure that importing should be done through a limited liability company. Any ways we can formalize the economy more in your idea? And we'll have it in 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, Talal, I mean, there are, if you want to collect more revenue, you have to catch it at source. That's a simple principle when you look at the culture and the mindset of the Sri Lankan people. Until they get used to paying taxes, that it becomes their responsibility as a law-abiding citizen. So you have to catch it at source. So I agree with Bingu when he said one of the easy ones, do a 10% withholding, at source, make it even a final tax. You want to make it 15%, go even and hammer 15%. Right? And you will easily collect about 50 billion rupees on this straight away. Right? It's simple as that. Because our savings are about 10 trillion. Right? And you calculate the interest back on that and then do a 10%. You can easily do this. Number one. Number two is that there are enough other mechanisms. So Bingu said one other thing, credit cards. I mean, we have more than 1 million credit cards in issue, right? Say everyone is using, 2 credit cards, 3 credit cards. You are talking 300,000-400,000 people having credit cards. So actually they should be paying taxes. Everything else, say people who are buying air tickets. See the four most common destinations are, as you know, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Dubai. Every day there are about 10 flights flying out, right? 200 pax aircraft, you are talking 2,000 people going out 365 days of the year. You can't buy a ticket today for 150,000 rupees if you're not earning 100,000 of income. Why are we issuing, unless you are going for overseas employment, say to the Middle East or wherever it is, everyone else traveling, you can't buy a air ticket if you don't, there's enough ways, but no one is keen on doing this because these are unpopular, Talal. Politicians will not do this, right? Every time you buy, whether it's buying a motor vehicle, buying a land, buying an apartment, see all these people who are buying, how can you buy an apartment if you don't have a tax file? Right? There are enough simple ways. How can you see when you ask for currency from the bank, Talal, you would have seen this. You have to fill in a central bank form. In that there is a cage to put your tax file number. The banks are not enforcing it. right? You should not be able to take even $100 for travel purposes unless you have a tax file. I mean, there's enough ways of expanding this. And of course, the ultimate is having a digital ID. But before that, there's enough ways to expand it by catching it at source. Simply at source. People who are sending their kids to private schools, international schools. How can you send your kids to international school if you don't have a tax file? If you're not earning 100,000? So there's enough, but no politician, Talal, will do this. They will all talk about it as usual until the cows come home, and they will not do it because these are extremely unpopular measures. Coming back to your question, is again, see, I think these are discussed again, even on these imports, right? I've served on bank boards for about 12, 15 years now. There's such a huge cash economy there in PETA. All the imports, how it happens, the settlements, it's all cash economy. You just go to all those, whether it's the first cross street, second cross street, the bank stalls, you just name it, all those streets out there in PETA. It's entirely a cash economy, right? And the bankers know this because they know how the collections are done, the size of the cash walls they keep there in those branches. Right, and the insurance cover they take to carry this cash back. The banks know about this, right? But no one will want to touch it because it's good business. But Bingu touched on this. It's a huge cash economy. So what we need is we need, as soon as the election. See, nothing will happen, Talal, in over the next 8 to 10 months because the elections are around the corner. So we'll have to give the standard handouts, because you have to woo the voters, nothing will happen. I think what we need is when we have the same discussion next year, Talal, 2025 budget held in November, hopefully after the elections, then we need to commit these politicians and say, now tell me what you are going to do for the next 5 years. You need to demand it. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Thanks, Talal.
All right. Thank you, Sujiva. I'll hand over to Arun. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Talal, for handling that portion of our webinar. And indeed, we have learned a lot. We benefited greatly from the commentary issued by various panelists. We have had so many and different perspectives that were brought to bear. But what we do appreciate is, in as much as we are talking about or referring to expectations with regard to the budget proposals for 2024, there have also been many recommendations, and some brutally frank stuff has been forthcoming. All right, so in this final stage of our webinar, we are bringing on Dinesh Weerakkody, who of course is no stranger. He's the Vice President of the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors and a former chairman of ICCSL. And he will be taking up a few questions here, some of which he has elicited from those members of the public who are very interested in the same topic. And so let me hand over proceedings to Dinesh.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Talal, for that excellent conversation. I'd like to start off with Tanya before she goes off. Tanya, are you still there? Tanya, can you hear us? Okay. Right. There's a question here. Maybe Sujiva and Sujiva can handle it. The question is, how do you determine the optimum level of tax for a country like Sri Lanka? Sujiva, can you take that?
Yeah. See, at the moment, Dinesh, in my view, we've gone beyond that optimum level. We've definitely gone beyond that optimum level. I think, in my view, 36% is on the high side when it comes to personal taxes. And I think we can still manage, I think there have been enough discussion on this, at about 30% without a revenue drop. We can definitely manage the revenue what we are getting now, maybe even, and as I said, enough ways to expand the net if the bureaucrats want to do it. We need to take off all these miscellaneous taxes, including social security levy, PAL and all these things. We need to simplify it as much as possible, even put the rates high so that it becomes far more transparent it's efficient and effective. So my view is, if you ask me in a nutshell, 30% for corporates at the moment, that's fine for us to go on that. But I think the personal taxes need to come down to about 30% without impacting revenue. Take away all the miscellaneous taxes. Even if you want to have VAT at 20%, my proposal, take off the social security levy at 2.5% and make VAT 20%. It's a short answer, Dinesh, on that.
Thank you. Kanishka, maybe you can say something.
No, I broadly agree. No, thanks, Dinesh. I broadly agree with Sujeeva. The one thing I would add to this is that I think our policymakers need to be more aware of this economic theory called the Laffer curve. It's plain economics. It's that the amount of revenue you can raise on any tax increases at the start when you go from, say, 5% to 10% tax, but it actually reduces beyond a certain point, maybe going from 30 to 36. So you can have conversations, but at least I think, the policy should be done with that kind of theory in mind, so that you're not overtaxing in certain areas, which actually makes it, less than good from a revenue collection perspective. So that's something really I hope our policymakers can take.
Yeah, Talal, I'll maybe bring you in here also, just to get a quick comment from you as well, because you've been talking a lot about taxation and stuff like that. This, how do we balance this direct and indirect?
So, yeah, thanks, Dinesh. Direct, indirect taxes have been contributing for around 70%. So as far as direct taxes gone, one of the things I proposed to the three members advising the president was, as Sujeeva said, there is a huge cash market when you look at PETA. So why not be like, if you want to import something, anything over 100,000 or less, you have to do it through a limited liability company. Then you get auditors. You have to be audited. Then there are formalizations. People who work under you have to get EPF, ETFs. So that's one way of bringing people inside. Of course, this can't be done soon. You have to give them a time of 1 year, but that is one way of bringing the cash business in. Make it like extremely easy for them to formalize. The other thing is, like New Zealand and others, make it easier to register a company and to close down a limited liability company. That's one solution, to be quick.
Okay, thank you. So much was said about the tourism moratoriums. Kanishka and Sujeeva, what are some of the options the banks have, given the fact that they're struggling on their capital adequacy ratios?
If I may jump in, actually, Sujeeva was happy to. You can go first.
Sorry, quick one. Dinesh, I'm really happy that, I know you are working behind the scenes to sort out this tourism sector mess. As I mentioned earlier, we will end up with about 700 billion of debt, Dinesh, at the end of this year. And without you and I knowing about it, maybe in 2 years' time, when we have the same chat, 2025 budget, it will be $1 trillion. Completely unsustainable. We need to make sure that the banking sector is stable and safeguarded. So we need to, my recommendation is that I think, hopefully through one of the budget proposal, that we need to get a task force appointed, which includes people from the banking sector, tourism sector, airport authority, whoever the experts that is required. And we need to set up a fund and identify revenue sources which can compete. The revenue sources can come in so many different forms. I don't think there's a forum to go in there. And then see how do we stabilize this sector and also give them a little bit of space for them to grow. Because currently, at 2 million tourists coming into the country, the sector cannot service this debt. Just to repay the interest, not repaying capital. Right? So that is one thing that we need to do immediately. The most important thing is that the banking sector should not get impacted through this, Dinesh. But I hope, I know you are doing a lot of work behind the scenes on that, and hopefully we can take it through, and it could be one of the over the next 1 to 2 quarters. By middle of next year, we would have a definitive plan on the ground, which can have the nod from the cabinet.
Kanishka?
Yeah, so 2 things. One is actually the banking sector, the balance sheets look a little bit more healthy than they did 3 or 6 months ago. So we are no longer talking about a sector that's teetering on, the brink of survival. That said, you're absolutely right. You raised a very valid point. It's actually not just the tourism sector. There are a few other sectors also which are really in very stressed, and understandably so. They've gone through 3 to 4 very unusual events that have hit them over the last few years. So what's important is that we develop a sectoral policy for this, rather than allowing individual lenders to do what they think is best, because that can then lead to suboptimal policies. And in a restructuring scenario, unless all the lenders hand in hand with each other, you don't get an optimal outcome. Where everybody tries to individually profit maximize, you end up with a suboptimal solution for everybody. So it's important that we create some coordination between everybody.
Okay. So, Kanishka, some months ago, there was a suggestion to set up a bad bank and move some of these toxic into that, and then clean it up and then monetize some of them. What are your thoughts around that?
It's absolutely a very good idea, and something that we should be looking at, as a financial sector, because bad banks have succeeded in so many cases in so many other countries. There's definitely scope for it, and that's what I mean. It's not a silver bullet. It's one of several measures that we need to undertake to ensure stability. But it's important. It's not just the tourism sector has been hit a lot, but it's not the only sector. There are a lot of people in debt, and you need to work together to ensure that they are given a hand out of this hole.
And
Thank you. Anuji, I know you audit some of these. But any comments from you, Anuji?
Sorry, Dinesh. Sorry, I didn't get the question. You're like,
I know you audit these.
Yes. Yes.
No, about the tourism moratoriums and what are the options for the banking and the government sector.
So I think one of the options is actually to segregate some of these loans, because like the hotel sector, if you just keep accumulating interest on these, your debt is going to just double and nobody is going to really be able to pay it. So that was one of the reasons why this option was given, to really move all these debt to a separate entity, and then maybe to structure it in that way. So I think that's one of the areas, and also possibly also, like some of the other speakers said, we have to make the net wider and also help the SMEs to register the businesses in an easier way, because you have so many SMEs in this country who are not really registered, and as a result, they are not contributing to paying any of our revenue. They are unable to get really financing, which is also another reason why the finance sector is also stressed, because even when they borrow, they will not be able to pay because their funds are not really secure. They don't have their accounts properly. So these are some of the things that the government should really look at, the ease of doing business, because I think Tanya also spoke a lot about that. 52% of our entities, the entities that are contributing to this economy, nobody is really helping to make the business easier for them. They just have to continue with the most difficult sense. Can I touch a little on that, Dinesh?
Okay, thank you. Just 1 minute. I'm just checking whether Premnath is still here. Premnath is still there. Right. So, Tanya, actually, my question to you was, what would you like to see in the budget that can help SMEs to recover?
Totally, Dinesh. This budget is also not SME-friendly budget. If you were to look at the budget totally, I mean, industries have been only allocated 156 million. Everybody was talking about, the SME is not, I mean, the SME that I represent, that is from about 50 workers to 800 workers. These companies are all properly established. They have accounting system. They are all registered. Most of these companies are I mean, indirect or direct taxpayers. Maybe they do not, they do not fall into the income tax category because of the situation right now where they're forced with, because their liabilities are more than their overheads. But when it comes to the moratorium also, we are not asking moratorium. We are not asking for extensions in moratorium. We are only asking for whatever that occurred during the period of calling the country bankrupt. That is from 2021 after May. So this is the period that was very, very crucial. Period of last year was extremely crucial because when the country was called bankrupt, there were so many restrictions on raw material imports. So these were hugely affecting the SMEs because we do not manufacture raw materials within the country. So this is why we say the industry economy has to grow. Industries have to go within the country. If the industry doesn't grow, the economy will not grow. End of the day, only importing raw materials. And when the raw materials were restricted, people didn't have the capabilities of manufacturing. So whatever they did was, whatever they bought in was in a huge cost. So these manufactured goods were so priced at a very, very high cost, but was never affordable for the consumer market. And especially with a lot of I'm not talking about the food consumer market, I'm talking about the rest of the other market. Food is something, okay, you can, you will tend to, buy something cheaper, they will somehow manage, we say, but that is, so what happened is with the utilities going up, where their first priority was given to paying the utility, that is the electricity, water bill. Then that the next priority was to, pay their loans, housing loans or whatever the loans, otherwise they will be in the crib on no payment. Then the third...
I'm actually looking, Tanya, I'm looking for a solution. I'm looking for solutions. Tanya, solution.
No, the solution is this. So to give the solution, the government has to understand the problem. Right now, even the government is not understanding the problem. That's why I'm crying out loud every day. And still the government, in this budget also, Dinesh, have a look at the budget. Where is the money that has been allocated for the SME? You show me. So what are we asking for the solution? End of the day, the government is not responding to our hearings. That is what I'm trying to say. And we are the biggest contribution to the country's GDP. So end of the day, you all are not hearing, Dinesh. I know you are working behind the scene a lot for this.
You then come back again.
I personally thank you a lot because I know.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll stop you there and come back again because Anura is waiting. Anura, you can.
Okay, Dinesh.
Anura.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. I'll back to you again. Anura, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So you can make a quick comment before I move on.
No, actually, I think. Thank you.
So go on. So
giving...
your concern is about the moratoriums and SME sector. Yeah.
I think
what do you like to see in the budget?
What we like to see in the budget is to give a grace period at least until May or June next year, and then reschedule the loans, because all these small and medium sector people, they are willing to pay. But the only thing is, even though the tourists are coming, we don't get the cash flow to pay the interest or the capital repayment, because one thing, rate is low. Other thing is our cost of production has gone up, like all commodities, like all vegetables, fruits, everything has gone up. Then on top of that, electricity has been increased over within last 2-3 months so many times. So we need to invest some money to bring the products back to its certain standard to attract the higher tourists. And
so Anura, that has been labored. Anura, that has been labored.
So we are asking basically for
Just give me 1 or 2 options.
So a couple of things. Number one, we need some kind of a short-term grace period, at least until middle of next year from the budget. Number two, we need electricity rates and all should not affect our business at least another 1 year, not because of anything else. We have already contracted sales with the tour operators. So we can't, just because government increase the electricity, we have no way of bringing revenue. Other thing is whether you can allow us to charge the guests in US dollars direct by the registered hotels, so that when you do that, the guests also will consume more, because when you put in Sri Lanka rupees, it's a huge amount they see. And also that by that way, your foreign currency also will remain in the country. Those are the things I would really request. And also to look at this taxes, local authority taxes of 2%.
So while okay.
Dinesh, can I just add something?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Ashik, can you answer this question? Hold on, Ashik. Ashik, are you still there?
I'm here, Dinesh.
Yeah. Ashik, there's a question here. Someone wants to know, can you suggest a proposal that can help to get our talent back? Maybe you are the best guy to answer this question.
To get the talent back, of course, the macro indicators and things, those are the things that needs to get resolved first. The salary levels, the wage levels have really kept up, right? So it's not about job losses or underpaid wages that is affecting the talent migration. It's about affordability of a quality life. So if you take quality of life, okay, can I afford a house? Can I afford a vehicle? Can I afford a proper education for my children? So these are slightly larger pieces, which I think will take a medium to long-term time to settle down. But that's what is going to be key to attracting the talent back. But the positivity can help stem the rate in which the migration is happening. It's already kind of come down now because people are finding that going overseas is also not easy, because the cost of living in other countries also have gone up significantly. So people are taking very more careful decisions about going out. So the retention part is happening now, but getting the talent back, that's going to be a little bit more difficult task, because most people who left during the crisis time, where they sold their assets, everything, and moved with their families and their children. So getting them back here in the shorter term will be very difficult, but in the longer term, yes, we might be able to attract them. But it's important that we connect back with them instead of them being left. There is so many ways that we can connect back with them, so that there is a diaspora economic effect on bringing back work or contributing back to the economy.
Okay, thank you. This Ashik on the telco regulate. Hello. Hello.
You were on mute earlier, not anymore.
Ashik,
Now
can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay, right. Okay. This telco regulators, telco side, but do you think need consolidation and better regime?
So, Dinesh, thank you very much for asking this question. I think, as we were saying, it is very important for the economy to become digital over a period of time. And telecom infrastructure is something which is going to drive the telecom economy. Now, to give you a statistics, currently only 4.7% of our economy is digital. And the way to go ideally should be about 15 to 20%. And the only key to that is developing telecom infrastructure. Telecom infrastructure is completely a USD denominated investment that is to be done. And it's a large capex investment which is required. So the industry and all together has to make money to keep investing in this infrastructure. And that is something which is very important. Now, to give you a stats on the telecom, the industry, which was about $1.4 billion industry about 2 years back, has shrunk down to less than about 800 million industry in 2 years' time. And hence, the affordability of the industry for operators, the sustainability is very important for operators. So there are two demands that we have typically currently. One is a simplification of taxation regime. Now, telecom today is paying tax or levies on 9 different elements. Okay, and there are a lot of duplicate taxation which are happening. One of them is a tower taxation. So every infrastructure that a telecom company creates, there's a charges that we have to pay to TRCSL, and then we have to pay to the government of Sri Lanka. Now we are saying, can we remove this double taxation? Because double taxation is an impediment to the telecom industry to continue investing in the creation of telecom infrastructure. Now, if you want to launch 5G very soon, we need nearly double the number of towers in the country, and which can only be possible if we get this support. That's one. Second, I think what we need is a recategorization of telecom industry from an energy sector perspective. Currently, we are paying the energy tariff, which are categorized as a general purpose industry, which is about 80% higher than the industrial tariff, which is there. So the second demand that we have is, and this is something that we have represented to the government, saying, can you categorize telecom industry rightfully as an industrial sector rather than a general purpose? Because the 120% increase in the electricity tariff has actually has taken away nearly 26% of our revenue lines, and which is becoming impossible for the industry to sustain in itself. So these are the two things that we are looking as a help from the government and the regulator to see in the upcoming budgets.
Thank you. Thanks. So there are two questions here before I get to the final question. Maybe Kanishka and Sujiva can respond to it. One is there's a question here or a comment which says there will be serious consequences by allowing vehicles to come in, given that we have not even started paying our debt back. I think Kanishka, I think it was you made that. Could you respond to that?
Yeah, I think we're really overblowing this. It's a very emotive subject, bringing vehicles back. But the reality is it's going to add $1 billion to our import bill, and we can manage that based on the BOP projections that we have. As I said, that our services sector surplus is likely to be between $11 and $11.5 billion. Is hard to argue with, because this is just based on ongoing numbers and tourism increasing. Right? So if you have that, what that means is your goods sector deficit can go close to that. It can't be complete, as I think that person has rightly pointed out. We do need to reduce our overall foreign indebtedness, and having a positive balance of payments is necessary for this. So you need to have $1 billion to $2 billion cushion, in your overall BOP to build a sustainable future. But we don't need to have a $5 or $6 billion cushion. This year's import number will the trade deficit will likely be 5. That, even leaving cars out, will grow next year. It needs to grow. It will grow to 7 or 8. But I think, given the benefit to the fiscal that vehicles bring in, we tax them so heavily, and there is still a demand for it. You cannot ignore the possibility of raising 450 billion rupees of tax revenue by allowing $1 billion of cars of vehicles into the country. So I think it is important that we think about it. Also remember that whole vehicle sales sector is also part of our economy, and you can't ignore it.
Okay, thanks. Sujiva, can you take this question? Sujiva?
Yeah.
Sujiva, yeah. Sujiva, this question is, what will be the consequences of targets?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
No. The question is, what will be the consequences to the government and to the people of the country if the government doesn't hit their revenue targets, or the country doesn't hit their revenue targets?
Yeah. So I mean, see, Dinesh, if you look at the last 23 years, no government has hit the revenue targets. So I mean, successive governments have failed, and don't be surprised that it happens another further year. And in my view, they will not hit the revenue targets. So that's a baseline position. So the second thing is, as soon as you don't hit the revenue target, but and generally what happens, as you know, is we exceed the expenditure targets. So it's a double whammy, and so naturally your deficit keeps growing, and we are in this current position. So that's why I said, at the beginning, see, even if we are unable to hit the revenue targets, I think we need to manage the expenditure side of it. It's very difficult, unpopular. Politicians don't want to touch it. But the fact is, at some point, Dinesh, we need to demand accountability from the bureaucrats and say, you just cannot keep on increasing expenditure. Other than on the two sectors, which I always say is on health and education. So the only way out on this is expand the net, and there is enough ways to expand the net on the revenue side. I mean, the number of people who are paying taxes in this country is unbelievably shocking. I mean, shockingly low. I mean, we don't even think it's, we should be paid. We are always looking at saying, okay, I mean, in simple terms, how do make it a wanguak danne kohomada? How do, what are the ways and means of avoiding this? So we have, I mean, there's enough. I mean, there's the thing, Dinesh, I know you have been again working behind the scenes on, is this digital identity card. This has to happen. There's no way that we can improve our collection without doing that. And we have to start collecting at source until such time people take on upon themselves that this is their responsibility as a law-abiding citizen. Until such time, it can be withholding taxes, it can be at the customs, it can be, when you buy anything from where it gets registered at one of the government institutions. I mean, it can be air tickets, issuing of a credit card, it can be buying foreign currency, registering a three-wheeler, registering a motorcycle, land, apartments. I mean, you just name it where it needs some kind of registration. I mean, you need to. That's the only way out. So that's the only way to make sure that that our deficit on the revenue is actually managed.
Okay, thank you. Kanishka, I keep getting a lot of questions on the vehicles. I will actually won't ask you that. Ask you any more questions, other this will keep repeating. This since it's already 6:30, this is my. I like to close this with this final question. It's for the entire panel. I'll give you 2 minutes to answer the question. The question is, what is the one thing you like to see in the budget that can transform the economy? I'll start with Tanya.
Thank you, Dinesh, for that question. I would like, one thing that I would like to see is not really one thing, two things. One thing will be a huge import tax on any finished goods. Any finished goods that will come into the country should have a huge import tax, because we as manufacturers are very badly affected. Other thing is for the budget to at least allocate a substantial sum of funds for the SMB itself to development of industries in this country. Whatever the way, because the banks are the SMEs are pushed into a position, whatever the project report you take in, end of the day, they need collateral. And they have been, exist. I mean, they don't have any more collateral to offer. So in this case, the immediate SMBs that have been surviving, help them survive, not let them fall. And 30% has already died off. So don't let the rest fall, because this will impact the country's economically hugely. And mainly make sure, Dinesh, the import duties on any finished goods have to be very, very high. Otherwise, this local industry will die a huge death. Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you.
Thank you with the rest of the panel. Thank you very, very much.
Ashik,
I would think that getting the digital strategy, because it affects the entire country, getting that into would be the best thing that we can do right now. It has a lot of multilateral support as well, and we have support from the Indian government in getting the UID project off the ground. I think if that happens, that would be the larger impact, not just for the IT BPM sector, but across all sectors, and even for government services.
Thank you. Anuji?
Yes, so I think, like I said, the inclusion of women and increase in the contribution of women to the economy is critical at the moment, because we have a huge talent pool which is not really contributing. And one of the biggest hurdles they have to do this is the fact that they are held up with child care and elderly care. So I think the chamber has been giving proposals over the year to say, give some incentives to companies that are coming up with creches, investing in child care facilities, so that we can really draw these women back into the workforce, plus also maternity leave. I think some of the think tanks have even done the numbers and given, it's not too much. The public sector, the inflated numbers, the maternity leave is funded by the government, but the private sector is not. So as a result, if you are a young woman who's going to potentially be a mother, most of those women don't get recruited also by the company. So have a few focus thing, and also even on the public procurement, have a percentage like what other countries do for women who are in business to really make use of and contribute the procurement for women-owned businesses, because that will also include women either going into entrepreneurship or coming into the corporate sector. Thank you, Dinesh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Talal, I'll ask you also.
Okay. So from the budget, what my expectations would be, or shall I put it as a whole?
It's one thing.
Yes. So I'll differ with some, because I think Sri Lanka as a whole has to go through the other side, away from import substitution and more towards a liberal trade, this thing. And at the same time, this thing, speaking on the comparative advantage thing, I would say that when focusing on an export industry, we should focus on a select one or two industries and specialize on that. Because you see, if you look at it, Dinesh, 64% of the global exports are concentrated. Like soybeans, US and Brazil. Like certain semiconductors, one or two countries. So if you can find a niche and concentrate on it instead of going everywhere, I think we as a nation can come in front.
Okay. Anurag?
Yes, I think it's simple for me to, because our industry requires some kind of support by the government, giving us some breathing time for the industry to come back to its whole time. So for that, we need, there is an interest on interest charge. So that need to be write off, definitely. And also restructure all these loans, give us a little grace period so that whatever the cash flow can be also utilized to improve the product to attract higher end tourists.
Thank you. Thank you. Kanishka, can we have your 1 minute elevator message?
Yeah. No, balancing the budget is critical. I'm not talking about a specific industry, but getting to a primary balance is critical. One of the lowest hanging fruits is withholding tax. I feel we should increase that. Actually, a 10% increase in withholding tax can even raise about 150 billion. Maybe give some relief to pensioners because they rely on this. So maybe in the form of slightly higher interest or something to offset that. But definitely an increase in withholding tax is a low-hanging fruit revenue-wise. Zero leakage.
Thank you. Mr. Chandra?
Yeah, Dinesh, what I would like to see, this is a simplification of the taxation, a removal of double taxation. And I think which is very important for the industry is a consistency of approach. So whatever has been the approach that government has been taking in the last few days shouldn't take a U-turn and should I think, move in the right direction, because that's what is required.
Okay, thank you. Last word. Sujiv, you can have the last word.
Sorry, okay. So, I mean, one thing is keep the interest rates low.
Yeah.
I disagree with the way that we manage the interest rates over the last 12 to 15 months. And we have killed the SMEs, the larger companies and so on. It will take at least 2 to 3 years for them to recover from that shock, Dinesh. I mean, that's the biggest impact that the corporates are going through at the moment is high interest rates. And simply because it comes down to 12% by the end of the year, that doesn't mean they are able to recover from that shock. It will take another minimum 2 years. So that's my one and only appeal. But on the other one, a quick, some easy ones to increase revenue. I agree with Kanishka. Take the withholding tax to a 10% straight away. Bring the energy sector into the VAT. See, at the moment, energy sector is out of VAT. You can easily collect 50 billion on bringing the energy sector in. And of course, the VAT thresholds and whatever that is, and the VAT exemptions need to be removed. Just keep health and education on the VAT exemption list. Take everything out. I mean, do these 2, 3, and the VAT threshold, 250 billion additional income guarantee.
Okay, Sujiv, also a quick one. this you have been talking a lot about smart sizing the military. This any suggestions that you have? Given that we spend nearly 500 billion a year on the military.
Yeah. See, Dinesh, even right now, if I just take some example, you take the higher ranking officials which we had in 2009. Look at the number of DIGs in the police and look at the number of major generals in the army. I don't think there's any reduction between 2009 and today. Right? So there has to be a gradual reprofiling of the military. And we need to bring it down over a period of time. You can't do that overnight. We need to retrain maybe some of the lower ranks so that they can work in the private sector or in the government sector. But it has to come down. And also we need to look at, I'm no expert to say what is the ideal number. See, we are an island nation and anyone would say you need a very strong navy and rest of the forces needs to be relooked at and see what is it that what are the numbers that you really require. I mean, we cannot be spending 500 billion on defense, and and you compare that with what we are spending on health and education. Dinesh, it's simply unacceptable.
Okay, thank you, Sujiva. Thank you to the entire panel. PT, we are wishing Harsha and MP Thevarathanthri because we could put this to them finally. Thank you, and over to you, Arun.
Thank you very much also to all of our panelists. I think we have spent our time very well. We've obviously gone beyond to expectations, to many recommendations, and all of those recommendations have great value. How much of that will be translated into the reality in the days ahead, of course, only time will tell. But however, the substance of this will be preserved and hopefully communicated to the areas, the policymakers, shall we say, where they ought to be taken note of and heard. And just to reiterate the point we've made several times earlier, that on the Facebook platforms where this was transmitted live, they will remain active for a little while longer. If you do know people, and I'm addressing not the panelists, but also those who are tuned in and have been following at least a part of this webinar, tell others that this will remain on these platforms for a while longer. And a larger number of people who may have missed this or who have caught only part of it, well, please assure them that it can be followed. And usually we do have larger numbers who follow these webinars that have been hosted here by ICCSL. And on that note, we'd like to say again, thank you and good night to all of you. And we look forward to better things ahead. And we conclude with some messages from our partners. And it's bye for now.
The International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka is the national office of the Paris-based business organization. The ICC comprises of membership of 45 million members in 130 countries. Trade facilitation, export and import and cross-border trade and issues relating to freight forwarding and many other matters of importance are addressed by the ICC. ICC Sri Lanka works through several committees to debate, discuss and suggest solutions on subjects related to the mandate of the Chamber. Each of these commissions are led by professionals in the committee, with many committees functioning. ICC includes a membership committee, International Relations Committee, Policy and Advocacy Committee, Training and Development Committee, Banking Committee. ICC is the sole authorized guaranteeing agency for ATIACAN. It's an internationally accepted customs document which enables duty-free and tax-free temporary importation of items as commercial samples. The ATIACAN reduces costs and red tape. The ICC is also known for its popular publications invaluable for bankers, lawyers, arbitrators and anyone involved in cross-border trade. Its members are provided with a member's privilege card which includes discounts with multiple retailers. ICC Sri Lanka's vision is to be the organization of choice to advance international trade and investment for businesses in Sri Lanka. ICC Sri Lanka's mission is to be the change agent in national policy formulation and implementation and facilitator of global businesses with Sri Lanka and disseminator of information on the development of business utilizing the services of ICC Paris while continuing to be a facilitator of dispute resolution. In addition, the ICC Sri Lanka organizes seminars, lectures, meetings with business leaders, and gives recognition to Sri Lankan businesses for outstanding achievements. ICC can play a special role in connecting business to the world and be a driving force for all Sri Lankan businesses.
If you seek for business, look for insightfulness. If you seek for politics, look for anticipation. If you value lifestyle, look for the extraordinary. If you love sports, look for the passion. Daily FT. Be empowered.
Sri Lanka, a canvas with textures of resilience. We believe that we are not bound merely by chapters of the past. Instead, together, we are architects of progress. It's time for a novel narrative.
The changes that Sri Lanka has started on will result in a much freer economy, further liberalization. Our final aim is a highly competitive economy, a green economy, and a digital economy.
As a country, we are boldly propelling into a future with remarkable opportunities spanning diverse industries. From the dynamic automotive and apparel sectors to cutting-edge electronics, pharmaceuticals, and the ever-evolving realm of information technology. With unparalleled logistical prowess, Sri Lanka stands proudly distinguished as a top-tier destination, seamlessly integrated into global value chains. Yes, it's a land of boundless opportunities. Sri Lanka's relentless commitment to progress is evident through its prioritization of robust infrastructure development, boosting a wide range of industries. The infusion of investments into renewable energy, alongside seaports and an array of logistics and transport-related infrastructure, not only signifies progress, but also offers an exceptional launchpad for investors to harness and amplify their potential. The Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, collaborating with over 1,600 enterprises, of which more than 75% are foreign-owned, consistently surpasses 80% of the nation's industrial exports while fostering the livelihoods of over 500,000 skilled Sri Lankans. This notable workforce constitutes a substantial proportion of the island's talent pool. With 15 export processing zones in successful operation and a number of new zones planned for development, this blueprint for growth extends, heralding an ever brighter future. Sri Lanka, there's always more to it. With elevated standards of healthcare, top-ranked education, captivating real estate, and an abundance of leisure pursuits, it emerges as an unrivaled gem in South Asia. Its natural wonder and profound cultural legacy offer an unmatched experience to travelers. Amidst this, the cosmopolitan lifestyle of Colombo, the commercial heartbeat, takes a grander stride. The upcoming Port City project, a visionary 269-hectare metropolis born from reclaimed land, will amplify this cosmopolitan experience by ushering in a new era of vitality and sophistication, enhancing the very essence of life. Behold Sri Lanka, a nation steeped in heritage, brimming with hope for what lies ahead, an embodiment of a captivating narrative, a country with a story of resilience, aspirations, and boundless opportunities. The time has come to be part of a success story. The time has come to be part of Sri Lanka's story.